Good afternoon and welcome to Markets Today. It's me, George Bodo, co-hosting today's show with Mbide. And we have a lot of items lined up for discussion today. We have with us here, we are hosting today the Executive Director of NIC Securities, Catherine Carita, to talk to us about the bearish sentiment in the stock market. Has the market hit the floor, or should you expect further downturn in the market? Of course, we'll also discuss a number of issues around the market, including externalities, internalities, some of the factors driving the market downturn that we've witnessed over the past couple of days. But before we get there, we also have a couple of news you're following. Top of the news is the Centum Group has announced a deal to exit, well, one of the many exits that they've had. But they've exited King's Beverages. Well, there were no more disclosures other than the fact that it has sold it to a company they're calling Danish Brewery East Africa Limited. Well, this is one of the many exits we've seen, and obviously, Mbide Mwema, who's been following this company for quite some time now, Mbide, this is one of the many exits we've had from Centum a couple of years. It seems that they're exiting all the FMCG businesses.
Actually been able to get to a point of full valuation. They did mention earlier that they were also releasing Almasi and Nairobi bottlers. Yeah. And the valuation for that, or at least the money they expected to generate from those two, was about 19.5 billion shillings. Yeah. For this current one, I think I've seen a valuation of about 471 million. That's the valuation of the business. But then I haven't seen any data out there just to say how much is going to be received with regards to cash on this particular transaction. But what's interesting is slowly Centum is getting an easing out of the fast-moving consumer goods business. Yeah. It actually got some good assets. It created good distribution points or distribution ways of getting to the consumers, because this current brand that's been sold was actually selling Carlsberg. Yeah. So they created the hype, then they started doing distribution and created a network of distributors. So I think essentially they were trying out to see if they could be able to do something in distribution. But I find what is interesting is they're slowly moving out of fast-mover consumer goods and into infrastructure projects.
Which, I mean, the jury is still out, but you know, Centum has basically exited all the cash-generating businesses.
Exactly.
And one of the crown and jewel was General Motors. We had Nairobi Bottlers, which is very, very well performing from a cash flow perspective.
Almasi as well.
You have an idea where they're taking the money to?
I think if you're getting into infrastructure, the capital, it's highly capital intensive. Yeah. So I would suspect that they're trying to actually raise funds for this infrastructure projects that they're getting into. But George, you know what my concern is? Even when it was actually trading and had some good assets within the fast-moving consumer goods sector, it was still trading at a discount to its book value for the longest. Because when you speak to investors, they're like, okay, fine, we really don't understand the dynamics or the valuation of the assets in the portfolio. Yeah. We don't have too much information. Yeah. So my point of concern now is you have moved from fast-moving consumer goods, which is very straightforward, and now you're slowly transcending into infrastructure goods. So there could potentially be a deeper discount to the book value than we are currently
is actually trading at I think, if I'm not wrong, half its net asset value.
Yes.
And the market is actually raising this concern. And Richie, could you just give us a chart of Centum share price? You could see that the share price actually over the last 5 years has been slowly coming down. You think the market is right on this stock?
It is, because by the end of the day, it's fund managers who are buying this stock. So fund managers know where they can actually see value and where they can't see value. So for them, the constant question that I've always had is Centum never discloses the assets it's holding or the valuation that it's holding. Yeah. So when an investor is speaking to them, they're like, okay, fine, when I'm buying your company, what am I really buying? What are the special purpose vehicles that you actually have within your group structure that are delivering some of the projects? Yeah. Whether it's in education, whether it's in power, how are you actually ensuring that value accrues to me as a shareholder? So I think the more they get into infrastructure and into shared projects, the structures become slightly more complicated, and you actually begin to look at it as a company that is reliant on a positive credit cycle or cheap access to credit or generating surplus funds to actually fund these projects. So for you as a shareholder, you cannot see clear visibility of when you begin to make a return, either in capital or getting a dividend return. So I think that's normally the concern, and that explains the value overhang, at least on this particular
I think also for me, the concern is utilization. When you have thousands and thousands of acres, they've got thousands of acres in Riavi Pingo, the Fingo Ridge. They have some in Entebbe, Pearl Marina, I don't know where. They have I think they have unutilized about 80 acres in 2 rivers. It's for me as an investor, I'm concerned when you have thousands of acres idle, then I raise a question of utilization. And this, added on to what you're saying actually, then we're likely to see the stock being discounted in the market.
Either that or management just has to come out and just be transparent and help people understand. Because I think the issue is normally information asymmetry.
Yeah.
So people are not very clear on what you're doing and how are you doing it. And I can, of course, understand that some of these transactions are more proprietary information to be able to create value for the anchor shareholders. Yeah. But that's something that they have to find a way to balance it so that people can either fully understand what's happening and be interested in it. If not, then the continued value overhang it just continues over and over, and you keep seeing a deeper discount to the net.
They're also saying they're restructuring the private equity business.
Yeah, exactly.
Now they're moving from direct holding stakes directly into companies. Now they're moving into a fund model where all these businesses will be held into a fund. So the existing portfolio actually has moved into what they're calling Fund 1. Now they're establishing Fund 2, which if some of the conversations I've had is part of the proceeds from these sales,
we're going to fund, yes, that's what they have said.
Seed funding the second fund.
Exactly.
I'm not sure. When Centum used to have a very straightforward, simple business, I used to understand Centum. I've lost track of
George,
what Centum
maybe
is
you
doing.
Just didn't keep up with being smart as the market is. Maybe they're too smart.
But we'll keep an eye out for our viewers on Centum, what's going on there. Something else is I was telling you before when Oya is that private equity activity surged in the first half of the year, and most of this was in financial services actually. Total value of deals were about $1 billion. This is from the report from and Babbage, which was significantly higher from a similar period. There was about $600 million.
Okay.
Have you seen some of those deals yourself?
I haven't actually seen the report or the deal. I just know I've been hearing a couple of deals. I just haven't kept tabs. Maybe you can elaborate. What's driving? What are the key transactions that came out from this report?
Yeah, I think some of them will be financial services. You can remember there's a couple of transactions.
Okay.
In the banking scene, we had SBM, of course, completing a transaction of those 2 banks. We've also had some of the transactions I've had was mostly in the insurance sector.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think there's even one which is currently actively going on. Well, the owner doesn't disclose.
I suppose the interest in the insurance sector is the potential change in regulation.
Yeah.
Because then that makes the market actually penetrable and more profitable.
I think so, because there are a number of regulations that have come into place, including the Insurance Amendment Act.
Yes.
That has now prohibited agents and brokers from interacting with client premium. So it essentially makes the business, it closes some loopholes, which essentially makes the business more visible and more attractive. Wow. But from this report, what we get is that most of the money
is it $1 billion shillings or $1 billion?
It's $1 billion.
$1 billion.
Yeah.
$1 billion is a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
What we're getting from this report is that money is moving from public markets and going to private markets.
Because that's about a third of what the NSC trades every year.
Yes.
The NSC trades between $3 to $4 billion. So that's a sizable amount.
It's a sizable amount, and it's certainly something that we actually should be watching out for. Some of these potential M&As probably could be more transactions the second half of the year.
Interesting. I mean, we are speaking to people in that space, and we will bring them on the show just to help us understand what's happening in that part of the world. Okay.
Just a bit of an update on the markets. 30 minutes to market close. Turnover was just about 520 million shillings. Safaricom trading being the top trade, of course, trading in excess of 13 million shares at 29.5. We've seen a price rally on Safaricom's be there. While the market's going down, Safaricom has continued to rally up.
29.5. I missed it, George. I missed it.
You missed the bus be there.
Again.
Well, as another surprise, top traded today is Kenya Re trading 3.44 million shares. Remember Kenya
what price?
Just just about 2.8.
2.8 shillings?
Yes.
Okay, that's after the correction, so it hasn't really come back.
Remember the correction, I think the price should have been about 4 shillings.
It should have been about 3.74, so it hasn't actually. Okay, so that's a discount. Stock, yes. That's a good discount.
Massive discount in the stock.
Okay.
Yeah. And of course, some of the things that viewers can look forward to is we continue to see corporate actions. You expect any bank release in the next 2 weeks?
This week on Friday, no, rather on Thursday, Cooperative Bank is announcing its first half results. Then they'll have an investor briefing. But then I think also another action, which doesn't relate to the NSCs tomorrow, there'll be an oil and gas investor briefing. Yeah. So just, I look forward to understand what's the output, when does it come into play, and what does that mean for the current account deficit, if anything? Yeah, just keep our viewers, the ministry is going to give an update on early oil, I think it's
the early piloting system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it will be the ministry and Talo Oil who are doing that tomorrow, so certainly worth looking out for.
Yeah, it's very interesting to know. Just the other day, Kenya sold about 200,000.
To who?
It's a question to who and what was the cost of the sale. Something else our viewers can look forward to is on Thursday we are hosting Dan Arenda, who is the CEO of Home Africa. You can look for that discussion, a lot of discussion around real estate. Is there a glut? Well, a lot of discussion around real estate.
So it's a very exciting week ahead.
It's a very exciting
week ahead.
We take a short break, look at the commodity prices. When we come back, we get into a discussion with Catherine Karita, who's a veteran broker, by the way. Lots of very insightful discussion ahead. We see you shortly.